Hello, this is Juliet and Stephen from Open Square, and today's question from an IT leader is, how can we help to address them and us thinking between teams?
So a small question.
Just a small question. So yeah, this comes up quite a lot, the them and us challenge.
Yeah, it does, and we're touching on something which is inherently very human here. For me and my understanding of this, it's based on social identity theory, or the core of this is in social identity theory, this idea that all of us identify with some groups. You've probably already heard of phrasing like in groups and out groups, and that's where this kind of idea comes from. So I follow football team X, and therefore all of the other football teams are kind of them, they're the out group, so to speak. They're the people that I may see in a different way, and that's kind of the challenge. The more you identify with a team, psychologically, the more that you at the same time disidentify, if that's even a word, with the out group. And there are lots of behaviours in here where we might categorise those people, we might start to kind of group them in a certain way, and this is actually where a lot of stereotypes are born from too. So if you've got them and us thinking, that's exactly what we're talking about here in an organisation. We're not talking about football teams in this case, but we're talking about groups of people. And probably the most common one that I meet is you're talking to an IT team and they'll say something like, the business doesn't know what it wants.
Or that team doesn't understand, or they don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you start tuning into the language, you can hear it everywhere. A favourite question of mine, which is not necessarily helpful in the context of this video, but when someone says that the business don't know what they want, I ask the people who they work for. And I know that's a slightly naive question, but often if we're seeking to have an equal relationship and an open relationship in an organisation, because we're all striving towards some kind of similar destination, then those kind of pieces of language aren't really very helpful. They reinforce that thinking that the identity of the other group is different, that the business is a different entity and a different group of people entirely.
But if we talk about the social identity theory in a little bit more context, because it is all about, if you don't receive a positive experience, then people will act in different ways. So if you fall out of that group, or don't agree with that group, or there is a conflict or an unconscious bias or something else, you're immediately going to fall out of that because you're associating yourself with that negativity. So it becomes that out-group feeling, like you're not part of that. So what can we do, what tips can we share to bring those groups together?
Can I just build on that before we go there? Because there was an interesting thing I did the other day, and I helped the team to see that it just happened. I had a team, just to demonstrate how quick this can happen, I had a team of people who were too big to run an exercise with, say 15 or so people, whatever, so I split them in two. And it was within the hour of that session that there was competition starting to arise. And people describing the other group collectively, already saying, well, what are Team 2 doing? Let's have a look at Team 2's board, because we might be able to nick some ideas. And all this kind of... But it was that them and us behaviour, that this team were identifying themselves as a new in-group, and this other set of people, which 5 minutes before had been their team anyway, were suddenly an out-group. So the reason I say extend on that point is all of us are members of many groups at the same time. My political affiliation is one in-group, my social affiliation is another one, the teams that I work with, and so on. They're all, do I like cats or do I like dogs? They're all in-groups or out-groups that we've got. So what do we do? How do we help people?
What do I do? Well, without sounding crass, it comes down to the values, the purpose and the shared goal. That's absolutely the number one. So where you said earlier, it's just a reminder, who do we work for? What are we working towards? Which business are we in? Which team are we in? What's our collective goal? Secondly, it's probably ensure that continuous feedback happens. Feedback when people unconsciously think that they're in different teams.
Yeah, Yeah, I would agree with both of those. You can call it out when you hear it. In experience, alongside that, well, it comes back to the problem in the first place. If I can create two teams simply by getting them to work on the same subject next to each other, then the reverse is also true. If you've got the IT team saying the business don't, what opportunities have you got to make them work together on something? And that very much turns to your point about a shared purpose.
Yeah.
If you've got a team of people with nothing to unite them, then of course they're going to hold their affiliations and their loyalties perhaps outside of that group.
So building cross-functional teams?
Yes, very good start. Very, very, very good start. You begin to bring in, and you must have had this experience anyway, when you get someone who hasn't worked with a team for a while will come in, and you often get phrases like, I didn't realise that you had that challenge. I didn't understand that was how the world worked for you. And of course that's the point, all of their biases and all their experiences and their grouping that they've had before they've joined you coming with them. So yes, cross-functional, very good. Visibility of what different teams are doing and how that's relevant, and kind of telling a story into what's happening in the organisation.
Spending time telling stories in other teams, so go and talk to projects that you're working on with a different team that you wouldn't normally work with. So create that visibility.
Yeah.
And the understanding. And then finally, probably we talked about challenging perceptions and biases and beliefs, and so having joint retros invite wider and diverse thinking, so invite others to come along, invite their conversation, invite their thoughts to that meeting. Yeah,
I think that's fundamentally the best experience I've had so far, is when you begin to mix teams together. And it also doesn't hurt to explain this theory to people. People are familiar perhaps with the them and us phrase, but people aren't conscious of just how easily, like the team I described earlier, they aren't conscious of how quickly and how easily this stuff happens. But if you, like so many other behaviours, if you make it conscious and help people to call it out when it happens, then you can begin to turn the tide. The expectation I think you must not have is that you can eliminate this. I've never seen that.
No, for me it's all about creating that understanding, that awareness of what's going on. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. You know, how are they thinking? What angle they're coming at. So no, it doesn't go away. Well, I'd love to hear if someone disagrees with that and has seen that or has seen a way of getting us there. I think we're down in this question. We're down at such a fundamental human design where our kind of social positioning is so important, and therefore we seek identity for our self-esteem and so on and so on and so on. As soon as you've got a large enough group of people where you begin to, let's not go into Dunbar numbers and all that stuff, but even if you said, once you get past 100 people, which is just an arbitrary space, you can't know everybody, you can't identify with everybody, therefore you will have them in your organisation somewhere. But making the conversation more conscious and helping people to see the impact of it when it happens, perhaps, are valid and valuable things to do. Where it is causing a problem, get those teams to spend some time together, and as you say, a simple exchange program, even if they're not co-collaborating on a project together. Great, thank you so much for your question. We hope it gives you some food for thought and maybe some tips. Please do let us know your feedback and comments. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be notified of all our future videos. We'd love to see you there. But in the meantime, thank you very much.